freedom for me, it used to be money. It used to be my time. It used to be all of these things. And all freedom to be today in this moment means freedom from automatic responses, emotional. And so when you can tell me whatever you want and I can just be here with you and be present with you and not let it trigger or affect my nervous system, I won. Everything else will work itself out. And when I learned that, a coach taught me that. When I learned that, it's really started to change everything that I've ever known to be true.
Welcome to another episode of The Financially Free Investor, where you will learn information and strategies on how to become financially independent by investing in real estate, something that is not taught openly in our society today. Financial freedom matters so you can live a bigger life, retire early, and do what matters most to you. Get ready to hear tried and true methods to becoming financially free with your host, Jordy Clark.
All right, everyone, welcome into another episode of the Financially Free Investor Podcast. I have an awesome show lined up for you guys today. I just want to jump right into it. So our guest today is Jeremiah Campbell. How you doing, buddy?
Fantastic, brother. Blessed and highly favored. How about yourself?
Dude, unbelievable. It's so good. Yeah, I love your answer too. And so we met you through the Ayalas, the couples mastermind. And ever since then, I've kind of followed you, and, you're in GoBundance too, but we didn't meet through GoBundance, but, just a bunch of Go Bros. And maybe give us a little insight on where you're at today, married, kids, life, businesses.
Yeah. So I live in Southeast Michigan. So I'm just about 20 minutes north of Detroit, born and raised here, man. I'm a Michigander, love Michigan. We travel all over the country. And there's nothing like being home. I absolutely love it here. It's, declining markets, but, it's all I've ever known. And I have deep roots here in the community, in several of the communities. So people always ask me, like, you spend so much time in Austin, or you travel to Florida and you do all these things. And I'm like, maybe one day a second home. I know a lot of your show is around horizontal income, and I'm an active, I like active businesses, and I really enjoy being the visionary. So, it's a whole nother aspect of the horizontal income side of the business. I've been with my wife for 17 years. So we started dating when she was 18. We grew up together. We did not date. We are not high school sweethearts. She was just fresh out of high school when we started dating. This year we'll be married 9 and 5. Ryder and Ashton, and they just, how it is with kids, man. It's just a whole nother way to look at life. And so we operate a masonry restoration business. So our elevator pitch is we fix foundations. We fix brick. This is what we do. We're actually in the human development industry, financed by masonry repair and restoration. And what that essentially means is we use a masonry repair and restoration to build our brand, and our brand is building success. And how can we find individuals in the community, male and female, that nobody's ever given purpose to? Nobody's ever really they've lost track. And so we invest in them emotionally, spiritually, and physically, to show them that they can too achieve things in their lives. And so I'm really inspired by underdog stories, and just doing the impossible, and allowing everybody as a community around us to rally around us and support us. So it's been a fantastic roller coaster for sure.
That's awesome. So how long have you guys been in that business?
This will be our 17th season.
Okay. That's awesome.
I fell into it. I was literally at a 12-step meeting. So I got a little bit about my story is I'm in recovery. So from drugs and alcohol, like real 12-step recovery, to clarify, because some people aren't, with weed being legal in some places, and just strange what people call sobriety, right? And so it's abstinence from minor mood altering chemicals. And I was a heroin addict for 4 years. And I started with Oxycontin, Vicodin, those kinds of things. And tragically, my little brother lost his life when he was 18 years old to an overdose. And so I was 21 at the time, and that's when I got sober. So I got sober right before he passed away. And so a lot of everything that we do is building success. A lot of it is in the recovery community. So I'm involved with quite a few nonprofits, and we really push to change the stigma about addiction and try to take away because a lot of people think drug addicts, they live underneath the bridge, and generation. They're these people that, should be forgotten about. And the problem is it's our kids, it's our children, it's our neighbors, it's our dad, it's our uncles, it's everybody is affected by addiction one way or another. And so we use our masonry company to help change the way that people view. And so when I remember early on and 2 or 3 years in the business, and somebody was cutting me like a $30,000 check. And I just thought to myself, I'm like, I'm a dope fiend. Like, you're just cutting this guy a check and they don't know. And so it really allowed me to change my perspective on what my limits were in life. And that's when I really got the appetite to set out to make a real difference in the world.
Man, that's awesome. Well, let's go there. Can you maybe tell, obviously I'm asking you to condense 17 years into 10 minutes, but give us just your runway and how you got from being a drug addict to where you are today. I love the fact that you are purposeful with your business, because, more money is great. And, just as soon as you have money, you realize it's not really the money you were after anyways, right? But when you don't have money, you're like, no, money is like going to solve all my problems. So I love to hear that. And I'm sure that there's a ton intertwined in the last 17 years of your guys' mission, purpose, and everything that you're doing in your business. So let's just go deep, man. Tell us how you got into drugs, how you got out of drugs, what's kept you sober, and everything, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So to take it back, when I was in high school, my parents got a really ugly divorce. And my dad was very strict with me, very strict. And so my mom was very loving and kind of just, I thought it was very normal. There was a lot of domestic violence and hitting and punching and throwing stuff. And I didn't know that wasn't normal. I just kind of thought that everybody lived that way. And I don't know, because what's normal to you is just it's my normal. So I didn't realize I was going through traumatic experiences, and I didn't know till years later. And so I was at a meeting, and the guy said, "You want to come work for me?" And I said, "Absolutely, I would love to." And I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was about. And so he took me and he goes, "We're going to knock on doors. We're going to go canvassing." And so I went and knocked on a door, and I was working with my neighbor doing tile. I got home one day. I was living with my mom. I was a kid, and there was $100 bill on my dresser. And I was like, "What's that for?" He goes, "Some guy named Kenny dropped it off." And so I called this guy from my house phone, and I said, "Hey, what was the money for?" He goes, "Oh, that job that you sold." And it was like a $500 job, but I got paid $100 commission on the project. And that was my very first time ever getting paid, not for my time, but for it was a commission-based sale. And that was the first time in my life. People had always told me, like, "Jeremiah, you move energy, you got this gift of gab, you should do sales." Well, I had nobody in my life that did sales. And so I didn't know, how do you even get into that? I didn't know what it was. I didn't think it was a real thing. Both my parents are blue collar auto workers, and I don't know what it's like to do this. And so a lot of my learning through the years was very subconscious. And it wasn't something that I was like, "Oh, this is your gateway to where you're going." It was just, "Hey, this feels good, and go with it." And this I can see a path to a future in this. So let's go with that. And so my parents got the ugly divorce. I ended up in meetings. I went to 5 different inpatient rehab centers. I couldn't, every time I tried to go, I would go and I tried to smoke weed. I would go and I would try to drink, and I would go and I'd try to moderate, until I realized that I was the problem. It was my thinking and not the drugs. That was the drugs and alcohol was a symptom of me not being okay with me. And I can branch that back, as far back as I can remember growing up. I always just thought that everybody around me had it better than I did. And if they knew who I really was, they would reject me. And a lot of those inner childhood wounds that created my reality, and then made it seem that drugs and alcohol was the easier, better solution to what was going on inside internally. So fast forward a couple of years, 5 treatment centers later. I don't want to minimize the importance of that. I'm a firm believer of the 12 steps. It's worked for me. We have men's recovery homes. We really, really believe in an active member of a 12-step group, and how it can change your life. I'm a huge, huge advocate of that, because it worked and it transformed my life, and it gave me the life that I have today. And so we can only keep what we have by giving it away. The reciprocity rule, just like investing, just like giving back and having purposeful living, you too have the ability to change other people's lives by giving away what you have. Because you have this podcast, and this is the way that you give back to the world and the community, you get reciprocity from that. And this is the laws of the universe, right? And so I got my first $100 deal. I got $100 bill, and I'm like, this is really cool because I just had fun. I was drinking Red Bull, smoking cigarettes. I'm like, this is awesome. This is the coolest thing ever. And it was fall, and so I started bowling a lot with these guys, and it just progressed. I got really close with these guys, and then come next season, I started to learn how to install, and I started to learn the sides of the business. And I'm like, I can do this on my own. So 3 months of working with those guys, I went out and got my builder's license and started my own company.
Wow.
Yes.
All right. And then how did it go from there? And then when did you end up getting married? When did the kids come in the picture?
So, I got sober in 07. So it was July 26th of 07 was my sobriety date. And I did masonry for probably about 4 or 5 years. So I got married in 2011, and it was right around 2011 when Mallory was like, hey, how long are you going to do this brick thing? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. I was in college. I went to school, and that got too busy. The brickwork got too busy. And I'm like, well, and I was running a truck. I started to advertise. I took my first bet, and I went into a circular magazine. And I'm like, if I could figure out, I just knew if I could figure out how to get more leads and set more appointments, I had a service that people needed. How do I get in front of those people? And this was, the ad that before Google Ads was really a thing. I mean, it was up there, but most people didn't have, nobody had, this is like right before the time when the first iPhone came out, when they had screens, and everybody, I still had a BlackBerry at the time. And that's how we were communicating. So I did a circular magazine. And from that circular magazine was when I actually created and went out and branched out and bought my first 3 trucks. And so it was doubling down and tripling down on myself from what motivated me from that first $100 bill. And it was 3 or 4 years later. And then so she was like, when are you going to, how long are you going to do this? And I said, I don't know. But it continued to work, and it continued to make money. And then it come up time for our wedding, and we were able to pay cash for our wedding, a good majority of it, outside of some help from our parents. And I'm like, I don't know if I should stop doing this. And at this time, it was not about purpose. It was not about nothing. I started it because nobody would give me a job. Like, I was unemployable. It wasn't because I was like, I'm better than you and I'm all of this. I went to work with Kenny because he was the only one that would give me a job. And then he didn't really have a company. He was an owner operator, kind of, God bless him, but he wasn't like a business. And so I was like, I can do this on my own because nobody would give me a job. And that's how it all started. So then about 4 to 5 years in, I was working 2, 3, 4 days a week, and I, make $1,000 or $2,000 a day. And I was like, what if I capitalized on this? What if I really made this something bigger? What if I really put some effort into this and I could really turn around and make this something? And so it was, after I got married, started really, going down, and I put all my self-worth in things that I could achieve. And everything that I did was based upon how much money could I make. I was striving to buy our first house. We rented a house for like maybe 4 months or 5 months, and then I immediately bought our first house. So when I moved out of my mom's basement, Mallory and I were together, but we weren't married or living together. We rented a house, and then I'm like, I don't want to do this. So I broke the lease on that and bought our first house, and then immediately started getting into investing. And this was back in 2010, and it's when I first started buying real estate. And in the Detroit market, we were buying real estate for $20,000, $30,000 a house. So I was paying cash for these homes, in the ability to and we just kept buying them and buying them. I think I ended up buying like 7 or 8 of them in a 2-year span. And so we still have those today. And those houses have just continued to grow. But it was the business that I thought I'd never do, is when I continued to scale it. And so we went from, in this time period of about 7 years, we went from a couple times from 10 employees to 40 employees, back to 10 employees, back up to 40, back. And I'd keep restructuring my business, the way I was paying people. I went from subcontractors to in-house employees. I mean, you name it, I did it wrong. We got knocked down by the feds, but I was doing cash overtime. I mean, it was a mess. I've done everything wrong in business. No joke. I've done everything wrong. And I just continued to grow and scale our brands to where we're the biggest in the state now, union for masonry restoration and repair.
Wow. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's awesome. How did you learn and pivot and grow through those mistakes? I mean, from an outsider, I hear you go from 10 employees to 40 to 10, and like riding that roller coaster. how did you push through and get to the next level and maintain some consistency, or maybe there's no consistency?
No, there's definitely, I mean, you always got to find some kind of consistency, right? My consistency was always my drive and my determination to not let the other foot fall and not let somebody tell me I failed. And that was really it. And so I was like, there's no way. People have been betting against me and hedging against me. And I don't know who these people are, but I made them up in my head. And I'm like, these people do not want me to succeed. And like everywhere I go, people are like, oh, Jeremiah, I love what he does. I love his work. I love everything. And I'm like, these people think I'm going to fail. There's no way I'm going to fail. And so it was always not valuing who I was and the value that I brought to the table that ended up hurting me the most. And it was always, selling myself short on how I would, pay scale and how I would do all these things. And so going back and forth early on, it was in 2017. I joined a big mastermind and I met a guy and he said, here, send me your organizational chart. And I'm like, what's an organizational chart? He goes, what do you mean? He goes, and this time I had about 40 guys and all W-2 employees. And he goes, send me your organizational chart. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. And he's like, that's like how you organize your business. What do you mean you don't know what that is? And I'm like, I don't know what that is. So he goes, okay, well, I'll help you build it. And it was a guy in a mastermind. So he helps me build this thing out in the same time as when I found traction. So we rolled traction out in EOS. The EOS process in 2018 is when we brought on our first, we tried to self-implement for a year. So that was like not really a thing. And then 2019 is when we hired an implementer. And so we brought in and we started to task this, but I didn't know what it was. And at the time I had my three best friends. So I had another concrete business that we were doing, a concrete leveling business. He came to me and said, I want to do this on my own. I don't want to be your partner anymore, which I was like, okay, well, what's going on? And so he ended up betraying me and he went off and bought his own equipment and all kinds of shit or stuff. And then two of my other guys, what they did is they came in and they told me they were leaving the same day. And so I had, 45% of my sales and revenue leaving my business at the same time. And I looked at a couple of my guys and I said, if this backfires, we might go out of business. And they looked at me and they're like, you're nuts. We're never going to go out of business. Like, I don't know what you think those guys value that they had, but a lot of those pivotal points, I mean, not even a year and 2 weeks ago, two of my salesmen left again, and they produced, 65% of my business. And we just keep reinventing ourselves. And every time we do it, we come out better and stronger. We grew 22% last year, and we're going to do 100% growth this year. And so when you look at what you're capable and able to do, when you rest, it's only when I rest on our core values that we really run into trouble. But the reality is, as long as I hire, fire, promote, reward, and train within our core values, and this is in everything in our lives. Like, I'm huge on core values. Mallory's huge on core values. So everything that we do in our family is based upon so I believe less is more. So we have 6 at our business, but my most important core values, number 1 is growth. Number 2 is freedom. And so freedom over the last year and a half has made a huge difference in my life, the way I look at freedom. And so I used to look at freedom as financial freedom. Like, that's all I wanted. Well, what does that mean? Like, what's the exact number? And so I always thought $30 million would be my FU number, right? If I could just get that, then I would arrive. And then I was like, I hit the 1 million, then the 2 million, then the 5, then the 10. And I'm like, I actually feel shittier now or crappier now than I ever did my whole life. And I'm like, why? What is this? And then I ended up having a panic attack 2 years ago, and it changed the complete trajectory of my life. And so my wife's core values are kindness and compassion. And I'm like, man, that's lame. Like, that's lame. Like, what do you mean? Oh man. And 0. And I'm like, what is this? Like, why would you care about that? Like, that's not going to get you a cool car or like respect in the streets. Like, what? And she's like, I don't want any of that. Like, I just want to be a kind person. And I'm like, that's so lame. And so, and we've been together for a long time, right? And so we don't have to agree with everything, but we have to respect each other, and I have to respect their opinion. So I've fallen short a lot in those areas, and just watching it grow and watching it transform. So everything we do now, are we being kind and compassionate? Are we teaching the kids kind and compassion? Are the people we're allowing into our lives kind and compassionate? And I don't care so much about your growth, but if we put her core values first, there are people that we're going to want to hang out with. And if you bring my core values into it, you're going to be attracted to us because growth and freedom. And freedom for me, it used to be money. It used to be my time. It used to be all of these things. And all freedom today in this moment means freedom from automatic responses, emotional. And so when you can tell me whatever you want and I can just be here with you and be present with you and not let it trigger or affect my nervous system, I won. Everything else will work itself out. And when I learned that, a coach taught me that. When I learned that, it's really started to change everything that I've ever known to be true.
Wow. So let's go there, because I think that's fascinating. And, financial freedom, time freedom, like those are all easy to define, but your definition of emotional freedom, I've never heard of that before. Tell me more.
Yeah, brother. I was driving home to get on the show with you, and I was driving and I just started to cry. And I'm like, where is this coming from? I don't know where this is coming from. And so as men, I work with a lot of men, and I had one of my employees relapse last night, and he started drinking, and he's been sober for a couple of years. And he calls me up and I said, Jay, what's going on? And he goes, I don't have purpose. And he told me he wanted to take his life. And this was no joke, 2 hours ago. And I got a feeling in my stomach about it right now. And so when I'm with myself and nobody else is there, so I've done a ton of, just like you. I mean, you name the speakers, you've been around, you've been exposed to all these people. And what is the most, when I want to be around somebody, what is it? It's the presence that they carry, right? You and I have been in a room with billionaires. And it's like, yeah, it's really cool. What did you do? How did you do it? Like, where does the real wealth come from? The real wealth comes from, and Jordan Peterson talks about it all the time, is when you're sitting at the kitchen table, how does your wife greet you in the morning? How do your kids look at you? What does it mean to you to be a man? And so if I can't be present in this moment right now because my emotions are forcing me to be either in the future or forcing me to be in the past, it's anxiety in the future, or if it's depression trying to change something that I can't change, neither of those things I can change. So what I realized was my body was trying to keep myself safe. And I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, what does safety mean? And so I have this tattoo right here. It says, you keep me safe. And so it's right on the eyebrow, and it's for my wife. So I never realized my wife's, literally, she keeps me safe. She has the same one. It says, you keep me wild. And so people are like, isn't it your job as a man to keep her safe? And I'm like, it's not nothing about that. It's spiritually and emotionally. She helps me stay grounded. And I never realized the importance of that. And so you can take away everything. So 2 years ago, I had a panic attack. I had just finished our house. It was just like mid-COVID. We were going to Florida. The wife and my older son were gone in Florida as well. We were on the other side, and I'm laying on the beach in Fort Myers, and this overwhelming feeling came over me of panic. And I've never felt it before like this. And so, mind you, I've been in mental health, for a long time. Since I was a child, they put me in therapy, ADHD, labeled me all these things. I thought I was broken. I thought I was a reject my whole life. And the only way I could prove myself was to have the house, the cars, the money, and the things to get people externally. So I would do things, buy things, say stuff to impress people that I never liked. And it's a very vicious circle and cycle. And so what I did was I could tell you all about these things. I could tell you about feelings. All I wanted to do was feel happy. All I wanted to do was eat junk food. And I was in shape, but all I wanted was the dopamine. All I wanted was the easy fix. Make me feel good. Tell me I'm pretty. And that's all I searched for. And so that's why I got addicted to drugs, because it was a fast way to calm myself down so that I could feel better about who I am. And so when I talk about freedom from your autonomic responses, so Viktor Frankl said it best, and so he gets credit for it. I don't know if he was the guy that actually said it. He says between stimulus and response, there's a space, right? Have you ever heard this quote?
Yeah.
And so there's a space, yeah, between stimulus and response. And so if you can create space between that, and what that means is when you say something to me, and I automatically feel it in my body and I get triggered and I have to fight back. Have you ever gone and somebody tried to fight you, or not physically, but just yell at you or treat you garbage, and you just say, hey man, if something's going on, man, I'm completely fine. It diffuses every situation. After a few times of combating it with kindness, love, compassion, like my wife's been trying to teach me, when you combat it with that, at that point, there's nothing to argue. So that's where the true power in my masculine comes from. is when I cannot be broken, when I cannot be disturbed, when I don't swing like a pendulum. So my whole life, all I've ever done was latch out. Why? Because that was my nervous response. So these responses come from where? They come from your autonomic nervous system. That's the electrical charge of your body, right? We're trillions of volts of energy. And you can look into Bruce Lipton's work, and he talks about 1.4 volts in each one of our cells. And we have like anywhere between 700 and 900 billion, 900 billion cells, 1.4 charge. It's in the trillions of volts of energy that we are sitting here today. I mean, think about it. The reproduction, we make human beings, like as people, make another living organism. Like, how is this possible? Like, you have a baby, right? Like that you guys created that. Like, don't we want to question the power of the nervous system and how we're responding to life? So then I started to really understand. So when I was offended, it charged me: fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. And these are my responses to my autonomic nervous system. Boom, it's responding. It's responding. Why? Because it's made to keep me alive. What is it trying to do? My ego comes out, my thinking comes in and reassures why I'm sharing, why I'm talking about what I'm talking about, to make it make sense, so I can justify my behavior, so my addiction to the chemical compound that's released. I'm like, why? Why am I continuing to do this? I'm addicted to it. I'm addicted to the feelings. It justifies the story that I told myself my entire life, that I was never going to be enough. And so when I learned that the most important thing is the feeling that I have inside, that's when I really started to grow. That's when I really started to see. The minute I started doing that, and it's been taking me, I probably spend 30 hours a week in personal development space, whether it be through our, coaching clients, doing the couples mastermind, or myself and my team. And what it's really come down to is, the more that I spend with me, the more I can be present with who I am, and I don't need anything external. And so that's when the real power comes in, because that's when the divine can touch me. So I'm a huge believer in Jesus Christ. I think Jesus Christ, I think Jesus Christ is the way to salvation. I know it is. It's the only way that I know how. That my children, we go to church, we go to Christian schools. And so I veered away from that for the longest time. And the minute I start talking about Jesus and our mutual friend, Cody Bugan, and we get on the phone, and I just get lit up, right? I just get lit up. And I'm like, when we start talking about it, it's all the divine. It's exactly what he created for me, in the image likeness of him, so I can be calm, so that I can help be a shepherd and lead people.
Yeah. So how would you recommend someone start doing the work so that they can feel comfortable, not necessarily going to those easy dopamine? Because I look around, and like, I took my family to Disneyland a couple of weeks ago, and dude, I mean, people are self-medicating with food, this, with drugs, alcohol, even our phones, right? Like, there's just so many free and easy ways for dopamine, and we need it, right? Like, we need to feel good. We need to charge our bodies. We need to have it. Like, God gave us dopamine for a reason. But how would you tell someone to start working on being good with themselves?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, man. I really think the first thing is you can say, hey, find your purpose, find your why, all that kind of stuff. That's very challenging, and that always is ever evolving, right? Purpose for me is simply finding something that you love to do and helping people with what you love to do. And so you can do it. I do it in construction, and yes, do I think construction is glorious? No, it's terrible. I mean, it sucks. Like, what I do is not easy, it's not fun, but it's not what I do. I'm in the human development industry, financed by masonry repair. So that's really, I just started to change my perception of what was going on. It's not trickery. It's really finding a deeper meaning to what you're already doing. One of the things is stop doing what you're doing. If it's not working and it's not giving you the results, and if you have a really stressful job or career, you might want to change it. And so people like me have always just added more. And what does that do? And it suffocates it. And relationships fail, and businesses fail. And it's like, well, get this coach, do this, get that. And then it creates less time for what you actually need to do anyways. And that's declutter and get that stuff away. So we got to get the mess away. So if you had a jug of water and it's got dirt in it, and you shake it up, right? And you keep shaking it up, and it's going to be super cloudy. Well, how do you get it clean? You just let it sit, and the stuff will settle. So we are human beings, not human doings, right? And so everything that we do, let me do this, let me do this. And so, yes, sleep's number one. Sleep is the number one hack in the entire world. 7 to 9 hours of sleep. I get maybe 6.4, 6. I track all my stuff. Sleep's the number one hack. Water, diet, exercise. Those are the easiest, those, if you get those right, and if you can handle the food that you're consuming, at least for a good majority of the day, and the 75 hard diet and all those things are wonderful if they'll get you on the right trajectory, but you got to find what works for you. I eat really clean the entire day, and then I eat like I don't care when I get home for like a 1 to 2 hour window. Whatever the kids are eating, let's get pizza. I'll get pasta. Like, it doesn't matter. And that's but I physically train. I train more than 7 days a week. And so I'm doing cardio, and I do, the cold plunges and the hyperbaric chambers and oxygen therapy and EMDR. I love the things. I love the extraness of life. And I'm here to get the last squeeze out of the juice, always. So I think that most people should not be reading the amount of books or consuming the amount of content that they're consuming. It's a distraction. And so when we do a lot of stuff, a lot of it, it keeps our mind functioning at a super high rate, and we don't really know who we are. And so if we stop doing things and start taking things off of the plate, you'll get a little bit of clarity of who you are. If you're a single mom listening to this, I get it, but it's a half hour, it's a 1 hour just sitting with you. As men, how about just dropping into your body? Let's see what your body feels like. Sit here. What does it feel like? Mindfulness. It's the act of being consciously aware of where you are and what you're doing. Where is it? What do my fingers feel like? What does it feel like to go like this? What does it feel like for my butt and back to be on this chair? And we forget all of that. We forget the fact that we're sitting here in this world right now, and nothing else matters. But where we are having this conversation right now, nothing else even exists. And it's like, oh yeah, I can worry about that, and I can worry about that. Tell me how that works for you. Tell me how sitting here worrying about something is going to fix or affect anything. It's not. So what we do is we worry about an event in the future so much that we experience the pain now and then again then. And so when I started to understand I have to forgive who I am, because it's not my fault that I did it. I've been programmed by society to think and feel these ways. And I'm like, well, why would you ever want to do that? And so if you kept buying bad real estate deals over and over again, you'd stop buying real estate deals until you could figure out how to buy a good one. Like, it's a no-brainer. But why would I perpetually feel the anger and the shame and the guilt? Most of the stuff emotionally that we carry from the past that had nothing to do with us. And so we're carrying other people's emotional baggage through trauma bonds and through family and child of family of origin and all these different traumas that you can experience. And trauma is simple. People say, well, I've never had trauma. This is it, simply. Too much, too soon, too fast. It overwhelms the body. And something took place that overrode your nervous system, shocked you, in absence of an empathetic witness. So I have to go back and relive these things. I have to be able to nurture my own nervous system to then deliver a meaningful message to my family and my loved ones of who I want to be and who I want to discover. So it's simply sitting with your body and saying, what is this? What is my purpose on this planet? Where is my existence going? What really matters to me? Take everything away. What matters to me the most? And it'll get you a little bit more clear on those things. Everybody can tell you what not to do. Everybody can tell you, all of these things about what they want and what they don't want. But then when you ask them to get crystal clear on it, very few people will tell you exactly where they want to be, how they want to do it. And I mean, you've written, goals very, intensely with your wife and the masterminds that you guys have done. And it's like, well, if I don't have a roadmap to where I'm going, then how do I know I'm going to get there? And I'm a big subscriber to Rob Dyrdek's, I don't know if you've ever listened to any of his stuff, and he's all about themes.
Yeah.
And so my wife and I have a lot of themes in our lives, and outside of my business, I don't have many goals. We have the one sheet, my bucket list experiences, and we're going to Italy and all these things. But I'm more apt right now. How do I feel? What is that feeling? And when I can separate myself from anything outside of me, whether it be a person, place, or a thing, and I can say, Jeremiah feels good about who he is, I won the day.
Yeah, that's great. And just think about that. If you win the day, you win the week. If you win 3 weeks out of the month, you win the month. If you win 8 months out of the year, you've won the year, and you just start stacking that. And it obviously gets you to where you got today, right?
Mm-hmm.
One day at a time.
The next level, right? And so so my first, people always say that, this year was hard, and especially in the sobriety community, this was a really hard year, and I've never had a bad year ever. And so I've had years where I've lost a ton of money. I've had years but I've always grown from it. And I just experienced the last, 18 months to 2 years was some of the hardest times in my life. And I wouldn't trade it in for anything, because what I've learned is the depth of your hurt, the depth of your fears is the exact amount depth in the existence of how well you can feel freedom. And so because I have the ability to feel really, really low, I have the ability to also feel really, really high.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody says, the peaks and valleys, and I'm like, well, why can't you experience all of those? And when you try to stay in the middle, which is good, it's wonderful, right? It's very safe. I'm not about trying to live a safe life, man. I truly ain't. Like, I want to feel safe, but I want to go out there and give it my all, because I don't want to meet my creator. I don't want to go and get up to heaven and God be at the gates and say, look, here, Jesus, whoever's going to greet me, right? And say, hey, look, this is who you could have been. And my let talks a lot about that. He says, this is who you could have been. Am I going to know who that guy is?
Dude,
Am I going to look at, what's that?
That changed my life. That speech, when he told that to GoBundance, like that rocked my world, and it resonated with me so deeply.
Yeah, man.
And for everyone who's not aware of it, will you just recap it real quick for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So Ed talks about it, and his dad's in sobriety, and that's where One More comes from, is from his dad's One More Day. And he just started talking about that. And so he referred to, and I don't know if he came up with whatever. And so he says that, and he talks a lot about his parents, right? And he talks about when you tell your kids they can be anything in life, right? And so the start of his speech is, you tell your kids you can do anything, and you want to inspire your children and the people around you. Well, if you're not living your best life and you're not fulfilling your true potential, is the underlying tone of the speech, is if I can tell my children, hey, Ryder, hey, Ashton, you guys can be anything you want when you grow up, and they don't see me pushing the outer edges of who I am, whether it's physical, emotional, spiritual, then one day they're going to hit an age and they're going to say, Dad, why didn't you do that? Right? Why didn't you believe in yourself? You told me to believe in myself, but why didn't you do it? Habits are caught, not taught. I can't tell my kids to do something, but then they do the complete opposite of it, right?
Yep.
So when you die, and so a lot of high caliber, high capacity groups do this, and they write their obituaries out, and they write all these things out to figure a way out of how looking right. You start with the end in mind. So you start at the end and work your way backwards. This is the end result. I come backwards. This is how I want to get there. When I get to the end of my life and I transition out of this 3D meat suit that I'm in now, and I go into the quantum, whatever you're going to end up, I'm going to go to heaven, and I get there, and I'm standing there, and say Jesus is standing there at the gates, and he looks over and he says to me, do you know who this guy is? And this is the guy that he designed me to be, is standing next to him. And I show up there, and do I know that guy? Am I a spitting image of that man? Or do I not even know what he looks like, because I was too afraid to double down and trust in my creator to guide me and to show me who and what I can be, despite my own thinking. So the thoughts that come up innately in me, the thoughts, those divine moments, that's God, that's the quantum, that's the universe, that's all inspired, that's only good. You get those driven thoughts. Well, if you just stop the thinking and be present with those thoughts, only good's going to take place. But it's our thinking, it's the side on top of it that then tells us our limitations and tells us we can't do it. And don't you remember this guy? And those are all of the 3D realm, what we're experiencing in these bodies. And so I want to know who that guy is. I want to know, I want to shake his hand. I actually want to ride with him to get there. Right. And like, yeah, that's who I could have been. And it takes it to moment. Like, what can I do right now? I'm going to sit with myself. And so when I'm off this call, I'm going to spend time and I'm going to unwind, energetically change it, so I don't bring this energy over to my family. I want to be completely attuned and present with who I am. But my creator says, hey, Jeremy, I think I'm a businessman and I'm this and I'm this. To my children, I'm dad. How does dad show up? Can I be the best version of dad to my kids? Then I can debrief with my wife. I can talk about goals and investments and travels and yes, all of it. Yes, love it, right? But I'm her husband. That's my life partner. That's who I chose to spend. I mean, you've been married, you celebrate 10 years, right? And so to be able to choose, I choose my wife every day. Mm. I choose to be a good dad every day. I choose it. And it's important to me. Like, don't tell me something's important. You show me. And so how do I show you? And I show up energetically, and I want to be that guy. And so I feel like it's just begun. I feel like it's just begun, and we're getting this crazy conscious, paradigm shift in this world right now, and feminine, masculine, and all these things that are going on. Men are confused, dude. It's a time when Mother Earth energy, feminine's coming out, and this rise of this and that. And I'm like, you guys do whatever you got to do. And I'm whole, man. I'm whole. I'm here, and I'm present, and I'm ready. And nothing can rock me from that. No bank collapse, no economic, none of it. It's like you could take all of it, and I will get all of it back if that's what it was my design for living anyways.
I love that. And, I've always thought and felt and said that, I think we are all divinely created and appointed. We existed before, as spiritual beings, and we are spiritual beings having a human experience. We are not human beings who have an occasional spiritual experience. Right. So everything that you just said resonated so much with me. And, a lot of times I think people who haven't figured that out yet, or haven't had the opportunity to go through that and sit with themselves, at least in some way, shape, and form, right? Like we're all on our own journeys and everything. And the reality is, though, I would say, I can't remember what the statistic is, 70% or whatever of Americans live paycheck to paycheck and couldn't cover a $400 emergency, right? Like I would wager that same 70% is probably the ones who spend 8 hours a day on Netflix and who's on social media nonstop, and they're looking for the free dopamine. They're, looking for that next lottery ticket, because they think that, if they get $400 million, all of a sudden, all of their problems are solved. Right. And I think like there's a purpose in that in our lives, right? Like you're meant to go through that to become the person that you're meant to be. And like, how can you go through and have the highest of highs if you don't have the lowest of lows? So, man, I just love all of that. Like, I think it's all part of this journey that we're on, and how blessed we are every single day we wake up.
It's deep, and right. And so there's almost like 3 levels. And so there's never any unlevels, but there's the unaware. There's the people that live unconscious, right? And those are those individuals, 70%. And I do believe that a lot of that is systematic. I truly do. And so for instance, check this out. So did you know when women are born, they have all their eggs? Did you know that? All their eggs they're ever going to have their whole lives to reproduce, right? Yep. So that means my wife was, her mom gave birth to her, right? So she came from inside of her mom with all of her eggs, which means that you were entwined, quantum entanglement with cells inside of her grandma. So my wife came out of her mom, which then her mom came out of her grandma. That's 3. And if you're born with all of them, that means if you're born with all of them, that there's 3 generations, right? And so they can prove that trauma is passed on generational, right? And so all of these unconscious beings, right? We have this innate ability to pass these things on. It's up to men like us to lead our families to break those generational curses. Yes, money's cool. Yes, legacy. Yes. Love it. It means nothing if you can't pass on healing. And so we have these unconscious beings. God bless them, all of them, no matter what. Very victimized mentality. The government did this, COVID did that, whatever. So you can rise up and stop being a victim whenever you feel like it. Number 2 is that you're consciously aware, but you don't know how to get to the actual freedom. And I see a lot of people in the community, and a lot of men, unfortunately, that take the ultimate sacrifice and believe the pain body and take their lives, get stuck in number 2. And number 2 is almost like a purgatory. And so you're aware of it, but you don't know how to let go of it. And so it's almost, when you're living unconscious, it's just what it is. She, this, that, women, cars, all of the lower devil things that they talk about, right? These sins. And so you go from unconscious to conscious. Well, if you can't get past that to freedom, to the real depth of allowing yourselves to actually transcend to a higher consciousness, because there's so much going on around us. So think about it. If you go in the streets after this call and ask every person, what money means to them, how many different answers do you think you're going to get?
Oh, yeah. Every person's going to have a different answer. Some people won't even know how to answer it.
Correct. So did money change?
No.
It's the same thing. So it tells you every single person is experiencing life based upon their own preferences and what's happened to them. And so how can we possibly live in a world where we're thinking that everybody thinks the way they do? And so how can I get mad at you if you have a different thought or opinion on me? We all are different. And so when I can break free from the veil of this illusion of the way I think things should be, that's where freedom comes from. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Like every single person, my wife, my kids, everybody's experiencing a whole different experience right now.
Yep.
Every single person that's listening to this is looking somewhere different and somewhere different in the world and perceiving it through their own lens. And I'm like, I can relax because I'm never going to be right, but I'm also never going to be wrong. What feels good to me? This is my experience. I get this little short amount of time in this world, and you're 100% right. We're spiritual beings. But yet, how do I act? I act like I'm 3D. I act with greed and jealousy and lust and envy. And I'm like, if I could just flow through this and just literally know that God's got my back no matter what, that's when I'm really going to get powerful. So I can say it, and that's that number 2, right? I understand it. Yeah, I get it. I know what you're saying. Yeah, it makes sense. I follow the Lord. But do you really? He either is or he isn't. There's no in between. I'm either going to give full trust and faith, or I'm going to live. And so the universe responds with what you're giving it. So I'm 99% in. The universe says, no, you're not. You got 1% left. If you're 99.99, you got 0.01% left. You're not in. You don't trust me. You don't have faith. And that all of it will break down to that little last bit. And I'm like, well, what am I willing to lose? Okay, I'm willing to lose everything. I'm willing to lose it all to gain everything. And so that's when it really gets deep. And so when the healing comes in and understanding, and it's like, yeah, we have, for the most of wealthy, rich, we're extremely privileged, you and I. And it's like, well, how can I make impact in this world? And it's not going to be with money. But yeah, when good people, this was a mastermind I was in, it says when good people make good money, they do great things. Right. And so we can make bigger impact, but money just is a polarizer. It makes you more of what you already are.
Yep. So true. So, obviously 17 years ago, 19 years ago, you didn't have this same belief system. You didn't operate the same way you do now. And it's cool to see, at least hear your story, see you where you are today and how you can make an impact, because I can just imagine. But maybe take 2 or 3 minutes and let's talk about business and how you make an impact through your business in your team members' lives.
So and that's a great question too. And so we put the person before a number, right? And so we used to say that it's a job, we get a job, and then we called it a career. It's a lifestyle. So my guys, they live and die by our brand, for 2 weeks, and we train, competition. We train anybody that's willing to come in and learn. We do a 2-week course. It's our 5th year doing it. And we train the community how to do masonry the right way. And so everything that we do is set up to try to give them the opportunity to bring them into our culture. So I know we do 4 to 6 events a year, where we bring wife and kids in. And so Friday we're doing whirly ball from 5 to 8. And it's this, I don't know if it's like this magnetic little bumper cars with a wiffle ball. It's like in 70s. It's wild. And you throw it, it's like a basketball net. And so we do these things to try to get individuals involved. I know when I got, one of the reasons that I started using drugs and alcohol is because I didn't have a purpose and I didn't feel important. So when we bring them in, we show them their fast track. We have the fast track to 100,000. And so we want to bring people in, and within 12 to 18 months, depending on who they are, we can get them to $100,000 in income. And this is a W-2 income with benefits and insurance and health, like all of the things that we need to do to compete with the unions out here. We're a big union state. And so that's what's really giving back in the community. Anytime that we have an opportunity to sponsor a run, I mean, we probably sponsor 100 golf holes, and anybody that sends us, I just don't say no. And so here, you want to send us something, we'll donate to your cause and Wounded Warrior and all of the things that are important to my men. And so we really believe in my HR department. She's amazing. And so she'll come in and she finds out what they like. And so we give them personalized gift cards on their birthday to their favorite restaurant and how much more impactful that is. And so I can't tell you how many times we've received a phone call in the middle of the night, taking people to psych wards, taking people to rehab, going, no matter what they need, we'll show up for them. We pay for a therapist. It's our insurance covers every 2 weeks. We'll cover the cost in between because we know how important therapy is. We know that people don't stay at a company because it's the right thing to do. People won't work hard. So we hire for attitude and aptitude and not for skills and abilities. So when we're looking through people and we're trying to bring people on, we really like to attract people that will wear our brand proudly because of what it has already done for people.
Oh, that's awesome. Usually we wrap up with a couple questions, and I want to be sensitive to your time because I know that you're going to decompress and then go be an awesome dad and husband. Knowing what you know now, what would you have done differently about your journey?
I would have learned how to be in my body earlier on. And so if I was listening to this 2.5, 3 years ago, I would stop listening. I'd be like, this guy's an idiot. He doesn't know shit. He doesn't know anything. He wants to, it didn't mean anything to me. Like everything that I talk about now didn't mean it because it wasn't part of my journey. I didn't care at all. So I would have taken the time to, I don't want to say I didn't care because I was still a loving husband. I mean, we've been together for a long time, but I was talking to my therapist yesterday and she said, I still see my wife as the girl that I started dating. And I realized it was because I was emotionally unavailable because I didn't know how to feel emotions for the first 10 years of my marriage. And I'm like, that's a crappy place to be. And so then I have to release the shame from it. And so I'm not a bad person. I was just misled because it kept me safe. And so I would have gotten into my body a lot earlier on, and I would have started therapy earlier.
Awesome. What is one piece of advice that you would give someone who's just starting on their journey to financial freedom?
So it's a quote, right? It's whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And of course, what the number one thing people say is start younger and think bigger. Things that I would scale differently. There's one way for financial freedom is to find a big market and tap into it. You find a market that's bigger than you find things and you do the research before you pull the trigger. And that's one of the biggest things that would get you on the fast track. Like Warren Buffett, he just doesn't lose money. He might not knock it out of the park every time. He just doesn't lose money. And so if you're in that game and that's what your goal is, just don't make bad decisions. Or if you do, make sure they're calculated bad decisions.
Yeah. So good. Cool. Well, if people want to find out more about you, if they're interested in, you guys got a couples mastermind going on, where can people find out more about you and follow you?
Yeah, the easiest thing is the podcast is Destined to Be.
And are you guys still doing the couples mastermind?
Yep. I think we're off for the summer. So we just ended this round and we'll go off for the summer. So we'll reoffer it again in the fall.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And we'll chat with you later.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of The Financially Free Investor. If you found value in this episode or know someone who would find value in this information, please share with them, subscribe, and send us a review.